Hey, this is Chris, keeping it real, facts over fear. How are you doing this morning? Hope you're having a good Sunday morning. This is the weekly December 6th comprehensive COVID-19 report for North Carolina. I've decided to take all the reports and put them into one spreadsheet bundle. I will put a link for a public download in case you want to look through all this data yourself and see where I got some of my information and conclusions. I will also put a timestamp in the description so that you can know when each one of the separate reports begins. So notes, all data and charts is 14-day rolling average. I've went through this last week. The left chart shows recalculated data based on CDC statements that only 1 in 9 COVID cases are actually confirmed. So cases are now roughly, they were 50% higher last week. They're a little bit higher this week. In percentage terms, it's not a huge increase, but when you look at the graph, you can see that they are still, there was a slight pause last weekend, and now they are heading back up again. That's a pretty steep curve for a 14-day rolling average. The death rate is now at 1%, one of the lowest points during this pandemic. This rose slightly from last week. Analysis. Cases continue to rise for 3 reasons, so especially given that last week was Thanksgiving and we anticipated that this might happen. I was hoping it wouldn't. I was hoping the population had been intermixed enough that it wouldn't have such a big effect, but evidently it has. Of course, that makes sense in the light of there's so many less infections than I previously thought there were. Confirmed cases, excuse me. Well, same thing. Cases continue to rise for 3 reasons. Children in school, I believe just about every K through 5 school is back in operation in the state. That amounts to about 400,000 children. You think about the number of adults associated with those children, number of staff at schools, staff's children, staff's relatives. It's a big number, and so that's one of the reasons why the cases are going up. In fact, anecdotally, I know that our grandchildren who live down in Harnett County, their schools are teetering on the verge of reclosing because so many staff members either have COVID-19 or they've been quarantined because of contact with someone with COVID-19. One little thing that was little mentioned in the news last week in the run-up to this, university students went back home at Thanksgiving. So I know that UNC Chapel Hill, Duke, and NC State, they all ended their semester the day before Thanksgiving. And all those young adults have gone home to their families. And of course, this is a kind of a reverse of what happened in July. And so when they all came to school, so now they're all going back home. And so we've had a huge movement of people again all across this country and indeed all across the world. Third is people are traveling, etc., doing whatever they did for Thanksgiving, getting together with people not in their own households. We all knew this was going to happen. People weren't willing to give up their Thanksgiving celebrations. And I added a 4th reason: masks simply do not provide any meaningful protection. I really do believe if masks provided some meaningful protection, these numbers would not be nearly so high. And so I'm just going to leave it at that because I think that's exactly what's going on. I can't prove it, but the people who say that the numbers are going up because people don't use their masks can't prove that either. I mean, they're really, I'm just going by common sense and what I know about what masks do and do not stop. So the outlook, the new herd immunity date is now April 13, 2020. It's 2 days sooner than last week. Deaths remain steady at about 33 to 34, 14-day rolling average, which is good news. I expect deaths per case to remain about the same or a few percent higher. In other words, maybe it's almost at 1% now, and it may indeed rise a little bit. But given the fact that so many more people are have confirmed cases, and the death rates remaining so stable, that is really good news. So even with the recalculation, North Carolina is still about halfway to herd immunity. We did indeed see a bump in cases, but I still do expect that once the effects of Thanksgiving are done, cases will turn down modestly. If they do not turn down modestly, then I'm going to have to once again reevaluate the number of actual cases per confirmed case. So there we have the chart for the projected herd immunity date. And, well, of course, it's been up there for a while. You can always pause the screen and take a look at these. Of course, this is the graph of actual cases, of report. The cases by report date is in red. Cases by specimen date are in all the other colors, which is why they drop off here in the last week or so, because those dates are still waiting to be backfilled once the reported cases are put back into when those cases were initiated. In other words, when someone gave a specimen to be tested. And here's the deaths per case. You see we're right under 0.1%, which is good. It's been that way now for, I should have put some bars in here. Looks like it's been that way for over a week, at least, maybe a week and a half. So that is, again, the name of the game is keep people from dying, right? And so North Carolina is doing a good job at that. So let's move on to hospitalizations. It's basically the same report as last week. We can see that the ratio of admissions to discharges continues to rise, although it has in the last week or so somewhat begun. Looks to me like that's just some weird data going on there, but it looks to me like it is starting to curve, although the polynomial that describes this chart continues to go up. And so we'll have to see if this is a momentary thing or if it's going to continue its upward march. So the same thing we've been saying for the last couple weeks, the severity of individual COVID-19 cases is on the rise. And I can see the three possible factors, which I've cut to 2, and then I forgot to put there were only 2. People are meeting inside and therefore getting a much heavier viral load than in the warmer months. Viral load is the amount of virus that you are exposed to when you contact an infected individual. The more virus you ingest through your respiratory system, the sicker you get. And so it is like if the more virus you breathe in and get into your system before your body has a chance to start fighting it, the worse off you are. It's like you're starting in the hole. It's like you're on a football team and you've got one guy against 12. If you get a heavy viral load, you're going to get much sicker. A little team sports analogy there. And number 2, masks are essentially ineffective against this virus. Tying in with point number 1 above, people feel protected and so therefore not being careful about social distancing and or avoiding poorly ventilated indoor space, which includes the vast majority of homes, by the way, and are therefore picking up much higher viral loads, and so they are getting sick. And so I'm not saying masks are completely worthless, but I'm saying that they are not really an effective means of stopping this virus. There are, I'm sure, in the spectrum of how people get this virus, there are a few percentage points of cases where it might protect them a little bit and it might help them survive better later. But all in all, they're not medical equipment. They've not been certified for anything. And so the only thing that's been certified is an N95 mask, and that's only 95%. So you can take your chances with a mask if you'd like. But I'm just, and of course I follow the laws of North Carolina. I'm not advocating not wearing a mask, but unless you're outside. But they don't do any good. And eventually somebody's going to figure this out, but they haven't figured it out yet. So the outlook, if you can, limit yourself to extended time indoors with people you don't live with. The most important thing to evaluate when you are inside a building is how many cubic feet of air is in it. The bigger the space, the lower potential concentration of the virus in the air. Also take into account how many people are there. Think of them as COVID-19 factories. And so that's basically, if somebody's got COVID-19, that's what they are. Every time they breathe out, they're breathing out the virus. And the more people that are breathing out the virus at once, you get the higher concentration of virus in the air. But on the other hand, if you're in a big building, like say if you're in, like I'm going to Food Lion later on today, and it's a 35,000 square foot building, and the ceilings are, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet high. I mean, that's a huge amount of air to expect there to be a huge viral load in that air. That's just way too much. Plus, we know commercial buildings regularly circulate outside air back into their HVAC systems. But if you're in a house and you're in a 10 by 10 by 8 room, that's not very many, what is that, 800 cubic feet? That's not very many cubic feet. And so I don't know what the smallest size would be an effective amount of air to keep the viral load down, but it's certainly not a small room in a house, and it's certainly not most houses. So that's just something you think about. So if you're going into a small area, don't spend a lot of time there. If you're going into the grocery store, you're going to Walmart, or you're going to a lot of other places that are big buildings like Lowe's or Home Depot. I wouldn't really be concerned about how much time I spent there, but the smaller the size and the more people in that space, the more you need to worry. And so I wish I could give you some hard numbers, but I don't know, because nobody else knows either. So I don't feel too bad about that. Hospital bed usage. Whoops. The point of this was to show that the spike in COVID-19 hospitalizations is really a record-keeping thing and not actually an actual surge in cases. Now, we do see that over the last week that usage in the green is total ICU beds has crept up to about 82-83%. Total staffed beds usage has gone up to about 78%. And so, well, actually, it is. That's the figure right there that matches that data point, and that's the figure there that matches that data point. Well, the other way around, excuse me. This one is this one, and this one is this one. So this is beds, regular beds, ICU beds. You see the chart there. So they have crept up, but not nearly keeping pace with the number of reported cases, which has gone significantly up. But again, data regarding COVID-19 hospitalizations will continue to look higher than it used to. Keep in mind, as long as the total utilization of ICU and regular beds stays around 80% or lower, there's no reason to be alarmed. And so, I don't know what's going on in other states, but North Carolina, it seems to be well prepared. And the number of, and I just threw in this chart just to show you, and you can, pause the video and take a look at it, but you can see how everything's been, total number of beds, ICU beds in use. No, that's not. That's inpatient beds in use. So this is inpatient, and inpatient empty staff beds. So we still have almost 5,000 empty staffed inpatient beds, and we still have the purple line, so it's not as many. I think it's like 400 or 500. Let me see what that number is. It is 430 for the state, and we're using 1964. So it's you got to keep what you got to keep in mind though is the number of beds and the number in use and the percentages that I'm deriving include for all reasons. So it's not like there's 16,000 people in the hospital with COVID-19. It's this very small. Well, it's 18. It's like 18 or 1900 according to the official figures. But under the old system, it probably only would have been about 14 or 1500. So that's where we are still. Nothing to worry about. We are still in very good shape, so you don't need to worry about if you get sick. Or am I? That's the big question, isn't it? If I get sick, am I going to be able to get medical care? Yes, you are. You'll be able to find it somewhere. You may not be able to get it in your county, although I don't even think there's any counties under serious stress right now. But you got to remember, we've got some really big hospital systems in the state. We've got a big one in Charlotte, a big one in Winston-Salem, a big one in Greensboro, a couple big ones, in Duke and Chapel Hill, and a big one in Raleigh. And so we've got, there's always going to be a place to go, even if it's not the most convenient place to go. And these people are getting better and better at treating this virus all the time. All right, that takes care of this week's report. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the section below. I really do appreciate your comments, especially ones where you say you've learned something or that you appreciate the time I've taken. I'm doing this it's a public service. I'm not getting paid anything for this, and I'm not asking for any money for this, by the way, either. I said, but I want you to be, if you're watching this video, I want you to be informed about what's going on. So when we hear, unfortunately, when we hear sensationalist things in the news, and we hear the governor and and Mandy Cohen get up and say how bad things are, they're not the best they could be, but we are far from critical here. Still, be careful out there, and use your brain, and that's all you can do, isn't it, until we get through this. All right, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the section below. Like and subscribe. We appreciate it when you do, and we'll see you on the next fact-filled video.